Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Femme Force podcast. My name is Rachael, and I am your host. And today I am joined by Terry, who is a helicopter pilot, an author, a retreat leader, an angel investor, and self-proclaimed tiara-wearing, champagne-drinking troublemaker. So she's now my new best friend. She is the creator of Piloting Your Life and a fierce advocate for women designing bold, unapologetic lives over 50. And we love that. So Terry, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I have chills. What a nice introduction. Thank you.
You're welcome. So tell the audience just a little bit about yourself and your background. We're going to get into
I am like the perfect example of how there's no single straight path. I mean, it's so circuitous. The highlights, I am a San Francisco Bay Area native. I have only ever lived here with a short stint in Fresno for college but that only lasted a year. So I have both the privilege and the challenge of living in the ecosystem, the bubble of the San Francisco Bay Area. I love it here. My husband and I recently launched Zeke and Terry's Adventures to inspire people over the age of 50 to get out, get it comfortable, and go adventure. We feel that travel, meeting other people, stretching outside of our comfort zones makes us really better people, better humans. Yes. And one of the things that we realized is as much as we like to travel, we absolutely love California and love coming back. So as much as I thought I'd want to live 6 months of every year in France as a total Francophile, I think that 6 months is pretty much here in California. And then
you get a little bit of better weather, weather.
Absolutely. I mean, we are having a dry January, and this is the dry January I can get behind right now. So, but being from the Bay Area, had lots of opportunities, but I'm an identical twin, and my parents, while they were comfortably middle class, couldn't afford to send me to Pepperdine, which is where I really wanted to go to school. And I ended up getting my undergrad and my MBA from Cal State Hayward, which is now Cal State East Bay. And the reason why it's important to bring that up is I don't have pedigree from an education perspective in an area that is really snobby about pedigree. Yeah. And after getting my MBA, I went to work for a company doing a system implementation, NorCal Waste Systems. And I accidentally at 27 fell into what I ended up spending 25 years of my life doing, which is IT system selections, implementations. And then I fell into life sciences, which has a lot of regulations, FDA regulations around how we manage data, system processes, clinical trials, research, getting to market. And it was just a natural fit. What I didn't know is I had ADHD, and I was harnessing it for good.
We love that. At least you're harnessing it for good.
Yeah, but I didn't find out I had ADHD until I went through perimenopause. But that's what a lot of us Gen Xers figured out. And that's another important thing is I am solidly Gen X, which explains a lot of my defiance and rebellion and desire to make it much better for the women coming up behind me. I had a very successful consulting firm working with small to medium-sized biotech, med device, diagnostic, and digital health companies. And I hit a point where I was like, I wanted more. One of the ways was at 37, 38, my husband got tired of listening to me go by the San Carlos airport saying, one day I'm going to fly one of those things about the helicopters, gave me a discovery flight. And I said, fuck it. If I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. My kids were still young. My husband had left being a police officer and was a stay-at-home dad. And I embarked on one of the hardest things I'd ever done, which was becoming a helicopter pilot. And a few years later, I wanted to be safe because it was a hobby, and flying in the San Francisco Bay Area is a little risky. And so I became a commercially rated helicopter pilot. So my knowledge went big and then small and narrow and then went big again. And I just wanted to just be very safe so that I could continue to be there for my kids and my family. And then a few years later, it's like, okay, I've done this, now what? And a friend of mine, fellow helicopter pilot, suggested I get into angel investing. Now, mind you, my entire life, I was raised to think like a man and that nothing was in my way. And it wasn't until I was 37 or 38 that I realized that there were true obstacles in the way of women. And it didn't matter how hard I worked, how smart where I was. I mean, I thought circles around people. It didn't matter. There were still doors that were not going to be open to me as a woman. And when I became an angel investor here in the Silicon Valley, that became very, very evident. I was listening to all sorts of podcasts by, it was the bro show. And I got really tired of listening to all these men in these echo chambers, not recognizing that half the population is women, and we want something different in the world. And what a lot of people don't understand is angel investors and venture capitalists decide on what gets funded. And then that determination decides what is available to us in the world, both commercially and from a consumer perspective, healthcare perspective, on so many levels. And I also realized that in order to get more women, more diversity into investing, into supporting founders, some people need to see it to be it. So I launched my podcast, Piloting Your Life, because my branding was all around aviation, just to be unique. And I started interviewing people who were doing things either from a non-traditional background, or they didn't look like what other people thought that person should look like, or somebody in that role would look like. And over the course of the 100 episodes and the couple of years that I did it, I realized that I really wanted to focus on women. And I really wanted, there was a season I did on healthcare, because I wanted to show the blue ocean opportunity to invest in women's health. So this was back in 2019, back when, healthcare providers weren't being trained appropriately. Research money wasn't going towards it. Investors, because 92% of VCs are men, 50% of them come from the same two universities. So it's total sheep group think.
Yeah, it's a whole it's the boys club.
If I could show them the money, maybe they wouldn't care about the problem, but maybe they would care about making a shit ton of money. And so thus Piloting Your Life was born. A couple of years later, I went to Necker Island for the first time, met somebody who said, if you're going to write a book, here's how you do it. And a couple of years later, it was like, okay, I think I'm ready to do it. And I wanted to write something that I wish it had existed for me when I turned 40, the what to expect when you turn 40. So I wrote Piloting Your Life to inspire women over the age of 40 to design and live a life of our own creation, to be the pilots in our own lives. So I've been on this kick to really inspire women over 40, and now that I'm 55, women over 50, to really claim the transitional time in our 40s, which is really a screwed up time. They call it your midlife puberty, they call it all sorts of different things. I see midlife as an opportunity, not a crisis. It just has been branded inappropriately. Yeah. And so between, my work is Terry Hansen Mead, Piloting Your Life, and then Zeke and Terry Adventures, I'm all about pushing women to really take over the world.
Great. We'll edit that part out. Way to go, Jordy. So you wrote a book, and the book, you said, focuses on all the realities of things that are happening for women over their 40s. And when we talked, you talked about the women's happiness curve, and how women rise after that. You said it was at the age of 46 that this was happening. So can you explain what the women's happiness curve is?
So the happiness curve applies to both men and women, but I don't really care as much about what men. I care about, everybody. They have gotten way too much attention. It's time to focus on women. So based on, if you believe this, not everybody subscribes to the philosophy that there is this happiness curve, but some research was done. I think his name was Jonathan. I can't remember his name. But at 46, we women tend to be at our lowest point of happiness, our nadir of happiness. I think it, and then we come out of it. And I have to say, as someone who's now 55, I lived that, where if you're following a typical perimenopause transition journey, sometime in your late 30s, early 40s, everything starts to shift, and you start to look at the world very, very differently. You recognize the toxicity. Maybe there's a health thing that's happening. Maybe your parents are aging. Your kids don't need you as much. Maybe there's some sort of shift at work, something like that, plus your hormonal changes and your willingness to put up with the same shit that you've been putting up with for your entire life your ability to tolerate that kind of goes out the window. Yeah. And so early 40s, and then by 46, you're like, oh my God, I have absolutely had it. And I remember that was during it was pre-COVID for me. I was starting to come out of it in COVID, but then you start to reclaim. So your ability to handle as much as we used to be able to before that point, we can't handle as much because so much is changing in our bodies and our minds. It's such an awesome opportunity for this rebirth. So once we hit that low point, then we have hopefully removed a bunch of the garbage, and we are making way and making room for the things that really matter to us. But first, we have to figure out what that is. And for a lot of us who, between our works, acquiescing to patriarchal expectations, our kids, our relationships, all of those things have sucked us dry, and we just don't know who we are anymore. So if we can go on this exploration to find out what we're interested in, what we're not, and experiment. In the book, I talk about making failure your second favorite F word. And we I love that. Favorite one is. And so when you come out of it, and this is where like in your 50s, I'm like, 50s are fantastic. I mean, we're still figuring our shit out, but 40s are so hard. And if all of us could just recognize that it's a very hard decade for a lot of us, for a lot of women, we can be gentler on ourselves. We can take better care of ourselves. We can stop feeling the shame. We can stop shaming other women and making it difficult for them. And if men got on board and did this, it would make it even better in order to make it so this midlife puberty is a little bit easier, and we could make it kind of a shorter ugly cycle rather than a long ugly cycle.
And you've done a lot of research on women and being in their mid part of their lives. And you were telling me that there's actually a social and economic impact when it comes to educating women and empowering them in their midlife. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Let's see. How would I explain that? Well, the challenge is for a lot of women, especially if women take a break in order to have children. I mean, there really is a maternity penalty associated with that. And even still, women in the United States, I can't speak globally, we're paid less. A lot of times our first jobs, we don't necessarily get paid as much as our male counterparts. And we are penalized for trying to negotiate because we're supposed to be the good girls, and good girls just go along with everything. And so our earning potential throughout our lives, if we don't negotiate the first job, we will always be lagging behind. And then if you throw in this pregnancy or mommy penalty, men, the data supports that if they're in a heterosexual relationship, if a couple gets pregnant, the man will generally get a raise and the woman takes this bump. So we hit our 40s, we're already behind financially. Our life expectancy is longer. We tend to take care of more people, and we tend to kind of freak out about, our money, especially if our relationships, where if you've taken time off, you're not making as much, or you're a stay-at-home parent, you're relying on the other person, is like you hit your 40s, gray divorce is real. Women are leaving relationships because we're like, we just can't take this garbage anymore. We want and deserve more. So you hit your 40s, and then there's this potential to have a lot less money available, and then this trajectory where you have concern about money. There's also this opportunity, and we're seeing more and more women in our 40s and 50s starting businesses so they can have control of their own financial destinies. And I love that we're seeing, I think, more support for it, but we are also seeing less, especially right now in the United States, fewer dollars going to women founders, women-led businesses. But women founders women leaders tend to do more with less, and they try to get to profitability faster, because if you don't have access to easy capital, lots of capital, you have to be really, really scrappy. So it's a harder trajectory, but at the end, they end up owning more of whatever it is that they created. So I still think that there is a financial gap for most women in our 40s and our 50s. But I think if we all embrace supporting more women-owned businesses, women-led, and we're very intentional about our spend, and we harness it collectively in how we are spending, voting with our pocketbook, I think we have the potential to really change the trajectory of these businesses.
No, I love that. And I think when it comes to the finances, do you feel that we need to start from the finance side, as in having more female-run hedge funds and investment companies and things like that? Because there's not that many out there. Women are becoming more and more into Wall Street, and you see them, but like opening their own agents. I mean, it's already so hard to open your own agency, let alone to try to do it and get the funding as a woman for women.
Yeah, no, Sally Krawcheck has been talking about this for a long time. And she launched the investment, I'm completely blanking. Thank you, Ellevest. A platform designed by and for women. We need more platforms, financial platforms that help educate women on financial, give women opportunities to invest in alignment with their values. Because that's another thing that we see, is that we women want different things in the world generally than what men care about. And Melinda Gates, in one of her books, talks specifically about how when women are supported in a society, the whole entire community raises. And so that's super important. In researching for I teach a Stanford Continuing Studies class on navigating midlife for women. And so each time I teach it, I refresh to see what's available. And one of the segments is on getting our financial house in order and death planning. Not everybody wants to talk about this, but in your 40s and 50s, it's so important that we women get our financial houses in order, really see the reality, and also learn how to better manage our money. I think you talked about in one of your previous episodes, I was listening to you talk to a guest about how we women are underestimated in how we can effectively manage our money. And I think there is a significant generational shift in the amount of money that is coming into the hands of women to control, from buying power and investments. I mean, it is like billions or $1 trillion. It's like an amazing...
Look at Jeff Bezos' ex. Well, how much is she giving back into the community? All that money. She's going to give all that money back into the community. And she invests well. It's not like she doesn't have an amazing firm behind her that's also growing that money as she's investing it. She's going to be able to give so much in such a long time. What is Jeff given? Nothing.
Well, this is like the me part of the patriarchal problem in our society. So, as I've done the research, I've been seeing more, I think like Jane Doe, and there are more organizations or companies that are trying to better educate women, give women investment opportunities. They may be starting small, but over time, I'm hoping that they get bigger. And we see more things like Ellevest, that we see more women in charge of major hedge funds or pensions, so that they can be more intentional about where they're investing their money, so that we can see that the companies that are in alignment with a lot of our values as women, with broader, better societal values. Yes, I'm a very liberal person here in the Bay Area, but things that really benefit more people, benefit our society, our environment, our planet, our world in general, that hopefully there are more women that are elevated into those positions so that they can have greater influence. The unfortunate thing, like within venture firms, there are only so many like partner positions and everything else. And we were starting to see more diversity, and not just women, but just general diversity go into the tracks that lead up to leaderships and partners, into money-making decision positions. But what we've seen in the United States in the last couple of years is really, especially in this last year is this anti-DEI, this last grasp of patriarchy holding on to society and doing it in a desperately horrendous way. And so unfortunately, I'm seeing that we're probably seeing a rollback on that. And the ground that we gained, I feel like we're going to have to make up at some point. Because that funnel is a long funnel.
No, and I think I completely agree with you on that. And when I think of working at like big tech companies and the places that I've worked, I mean, most of the C-suite is men. And you always have like one woman who's some kind of powerhouse, as she is, but one that told me at one point, she's like, here's the thing, in 10 years, she goes, you're going to see so much diversity in C-suite. She goes, but not now. She goes, because if I just went out and hired somebody like that, and they're not qualified, that brings a whole thing down on women in general. She's like, so you have to wait. You have to train them well. You have to make sure they're great managers and then great leaders and then able to run multiple departments at a time. She goes, and that takes time. She goes, and if you can't just throw anybody in there because they're of a different race or of a different gender or identify in any kind of way, she's like, because you're just setting them up to fail. And then you have everybody that identifies like them set up to fail too.
Well, look at Theranos.
That was like 5 years ago. So yeah, Theranos is a great example.
Well, we can't invest a woman because look what Elizabeth Holmes did. I'm like, can we look at the thousands of men who failed? And then there's the whole glass cliff thing where you get women promoted into leadership positions of failing organizations. And then when those companies fail, regardless who would have been a leader in that, then it's like, look, a woman couldn't hack it, and somehow that's representative of all women. And in our patriarchal society, that's what we do is we classify all women or all Black people or all brown people or all gay people, into this, like one person represents all of them. But we don't do the same thing typically for men in general, and definitely not for white men. It's not, well, it's all, this one person stands up for all white men. It's like, no, it gets to be an individual versus this collective. And it's disgusting.
And I also think that, especially when you get up to these things, you have tokenism. So you only get one woman. You're only allowed to have one. And then all the men that are usually the white men that are surrounded by them get so used to and comfortable with that one woman. Ever trying to add on another woman or replace that woman is near impossible because they always compare it to the one woman they worked with. And if that other woman doesn't measure up or doesn't do things the same or doesn't look or talk the same, like it doesn't work.
Yeah. And how many of those women had to conform to the expectations, and they had to contort and twist themselves in order to meet that. And then they hit their 40s and 50s and they say, fuck it, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. So you then see this mass exodus of experienced women leaving the workforce, leaving management. We're also seeing that these same women who've worked their asses off get to the point where they have to care for aging parents, or the menopause transition is brutal and they're not necessarily able to hold it all together in the same way. And our corporate structures do not allow for this, and so then you've got these women maybe who are very, very intentional about what they're trying to build, but then they can't sustain it. And so then you lose a lot of that continuity and that funnel that's moving up to it. And so it's not an easy path. The thing that I complain about, the boomers, the women behind, or actually ahead of me, the boomers, for them, they had to bite, scratch, crawl to get to that one seat at the table. And I think that if Gen Xers had actually had an opportunity to be at that table, make room at the table, or say, screw this table, I'm going to do something different, we would have a very different atmosphere. But because boomers have worked longer, lasted longer, and you've got this huge millennial population coming in, Gen Xers have really not been moved into leadership the way that we should have been moved into leadership, and we could have affected change as the rebel outcast population that we are. It's interesting. I see on social media these young kids, or whoever they are, going, Gen Xers have screwed everything up because they're leading the organizations. And I love the responses. I'm like, what do you mean leading the organizations? We never had the opportunity to lead. Don't blame it on us. Blame it on the boomers that were ahead of us. But I also don't blame the women, because they did what they had to at the time with what they had, and it was really, really hard, and they paved the way for us to even have gotten to the point that we are at. But unfortunately, we're still having to do an incredible amount of work. The lift that we're having to do, especially right now in the United States, to really try to affect the change that we want to see, because we have slid back. And I think it's just a matter of time that we've seen various different ways with Me Too and some of the other things. And I just keep waiting for that us to crest, where we'll actually have power and influence as women to affect change.
What do you think about the women who have paved the way and who, are probably exiting the workforce? relatively soon. Hopefully they invested well and they're going to retire, and we love that for them. Everybody deserves that. What do you think that they can do as a last stand to try to help the younger generation?
What I would like to see versus what I think they can. I don't know if they could, based on how they've been socialized and conditioned. It takes a lot of effort to shift from being how you are because of all that you went through, and be able to do it. It takes so much work and self-awareness to go, yeah, not everybody behind me has to do what I did or go through what I had to go through. So the one thing that they could do is actually do the work to have the self-awareness to realize that they don't need to punish the women coming up behind them. That if they do the work and they realize that, yes, they did, their route was hard, but not every woman's route needs to be hard. Then I think that will open up possibilities in terms of opening up pathways, in terms of mentoring. So if they have a chance to retire, I would hope that they would find a way to mentor, make introductions. We all know that getting jobs these days, it's all about who you know.
Yep.
And so if they can find a way to open up their experience, their networks, and be able to open doors that are so hard, that are often so closed, I think that would be a tremendous thing for them to do for the women coming up behind, is just opening up the doors and speaking up and just saying, I call bullshit on this. I think if they have nothing left to lose with their departure, speak up, call bullshit, but they have to do the work in order to recognize that what got them there isn't the way that things should continue moving forward, that there is a different way. But I think they could really benefit from that, because I think a lot of boomer leaders, women, man, they got their asses kicked. They had to be so much smarter and so much more capable. And there was always skepticism that you slept your way to the top, or you never deserved to be here, or there was the tokenism. And you couldn't even do it. What's that movie with Diane Keaton? And she's like a workaholic, and then she gets a baby by accident. And like that one, and she does the applesauce thing. I know the movie, but it's just like you couldn't do it all. Like, no, that was the bill of goods. Yeah, that was the bill of goods us Gen Xers were sold, is that we could have it all and be it all. And somehow if we weren't, that we failed individually, not realizing that men were not told how to support us. And society is not structured to support us to have it all and be it all, in terms of childcare, in terms of, all of the different things.
So I'm a millennial. I'm the girl boss era. So it was go, 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 hustle, hustle, hustle. And now we're all tired, and we've all taken up needle pointing as a hobby because we're so exhausted.
Yeah, you're just doing it a little bit faster than we did in terms of getting to that burnout point. But I think the parallels are there. And so my hope is that we Gen Xers can model something differently, speak out. Our generation just hasn't made nearly as much from a wealth perspective as either the millennial or the boomer generation. And we know Gen Z is just totally screwed if we don't do something different.
When it comes to mentorship, I almost feel that, the boomer women should also be mentoring the men and teaching them about allyship, and teaching them about how to make a manager from a woman, how to take a woman under your wing and like mentor her without making her uncomfortable or doing anything inappropriate or untoward, as, a lot of these things happen. I think Me Too was such an important movement, but I also feel that Me Too made a lot of really powerful men skeptical of like taking women on as mentors.
Oh yeah, I love that idea of being mentors to the men, basically coaching and guiding them to recognize that they also don't benefit from the way that things are structured, the way that they are, and that they are missing out on really great opportunities in hiring with potential and everything else. But they have been, a lot of I'm just going to talk, most of the white men have just been so coddled into thinking that the whatever bar or standard was set appropriately for everybody, not realizing it was like other white men who set that bar and set that standard to exclude so many other people. I remember I was at an angel investor event with this very wealthy guy who was really successful in his business world and in his business. And he had gone to MIT or something, and was complaining about how the standards had been lowered and to accommodate more people. And I was like, are you kidding me? I said, the standards that were set were arbitrary, and they were set by white men to basically filter out everybody else and have everybody look like them. No, they're lower. And I said, no, you need to recognize that we all bring something different to the table. When we have greater diversity, we have greater value in whatever it is that we produce or bring out into the world. We take into account things like Black people's hands not registering under hand dryers, or in building cars that seatbelts are not designed for women's bodies when we have boobs. Not to say men don't have boobs, but just say generally speaking. Or yes. Where do we put our purse? Or doors unlocking for all of them. And from a safety perspective, men would not think about safety with you approach your car, all the car door locks unlock at the same time. I mean, like, that is scary as shit for women. You know, all of these different things that men don't think about that they could build into it and add greater value or greater quality into their products that would then make them more valuable to a broader consumer base or a commercial base. And
or into the ones that are doing all the purchasing.
Well, and then there's that, and we end up just making do. And the men are just like, I don't have a problem with it. I'm like, well, just because you don't have a problem with it doesn't mean the problem doesn't exist.
And just because you can walk in a parking lot all by yourself, it doesn't mean everybody else can.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I learned about the concept of radical empathy 7 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe it was even closer to 10 years ago, when I was starting to get into angel investing. And I would listen to the guys ask the questions of the founders, and they were like, well, I don't need that. My wife takes care of that. Oh, was it the, what's the rental runway?
Rent the Runway.
Rent the Runway. So when, was her name Jennifer? Whatever her name was, when she went out to go fundraise, she was fundraising with very wealthy people, and the guys who she was pitching to would all say, well, my wife wouldn't use this. And I'm like, well, just because your wife doesn't use it doesn't mean there isn't a whole segment of the population that could really.
I'm a member.
I mean, so the lack of imagination and the lack of radical empathy to understand that there might be people with other needs. I mean, this is one of the problems of being an investor in the Silicon Valley, and which is why I've actively sought investments outside of the Bay Area, outside of, you know, like hubs, and then outside the US, is because there are needs that are huge needs with big dollars associated with them that are outside of the reality of the people here living in the bubble. There was this one particular thing, another old white guy, I get really sick and tired of old white guys. There was like a meal prep type thing, and the guy was like, we would never use it at home. And I turned and looked at him, I'm like, you're not their target audience. I mean, can you like expand your brain enough to think that there might be an audience, a market that is not you? That just because you couldn't use something, that there wouldn't be value in it? I mean,
or a busy working mom who doesn't have time to cook for her family because she's also working and picking up kids and taking them to sports, or just a corporate girl that travels and doesn't want to make food for one all the time and have things go bad and throw half of it away.
Exactly. I mean, this, man, it was just so incredibly frustrating. I was with Sandhill Angels for about 2 years. I ended up being VP of deals and relationships with VCs. And I just got so tired of the arrogance and the lack of imagination in terms of the opportunities, and how they would just stand up and they were just trying to beat their chests to show how much they knew. And they would belittle and they would just be brutal to the founders, especially the Black founders or the gay founders or the women founders. And I was just like, I just can't be associated with this. But it's just the total lack of imagination. I just think about, like, imagine what our world could be if we weren't limited by that constraint.
Our world would be insane. We wouldn't have half the problems we were. I mean, I always say, I'm like, if women ran the world, and like, if a woman, for crying out loud, girls should run the FBI. We would not have a top 10 most wanted at the FBI if women were all the ones looking for them. Women can find out anything within 30 seconds. If I was like, I met this guy, they're going to be like, the group chat's going to go off. I'm going to know his social security. I'm going to know what his mother's favorite hobby is, like where she plays mahjong on once a month and goes to bunko. Like, I'm going to know everything within a 10-minute period. Women ran things. Like,
there was an SNL skit on that with some like young girls, and they were like, they had the answer like do, and they're like, oh, he's over here, blah blah blah, and they're like, how did you do that? It's just like,
I'm a girl.
Exactly.
I'm literally just a girl. Can do all the things.
Yeah, just a girl. So
literally just a girl.
As you can see, I'm a little fired up about all of this.
Hey, but I love it. So, I mean, we have to be fired up. I think if we're not passionate about it, the passion's also contagious, though. And I think people don't always know that these issues are like arising or a big deal or prevalent to them, because sometimes they're just head down going, day by day and moment by moment. And especially for women,
or they don't see how things are going to affect them. It's
later on, and like this, it's a communal kind of thing.
Yeah, because every Friday, my husband and I go downtown and we're protesting what's happening with the current regime. And we keep trying to encourage other people to come down, especially our privileged white friends, to come down and hang out with us. Because a lot of them are feeling very defeated. They're feeling very scared and very anxious. And it's like, come down for 15 minutes. Be among people where passion is contagious. You'll see that you're not alone. And you might make a friend in the process, and get out of whatever the loop that you're in by being around people who are passionate. And I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because 6.5 weeks ago, I had a partial knee replacement and my world got very, very small. And even though Tuesday they were like, you're a rock star. The prehab you did was great. Post-hab, you're doing a great job. I'm cleared to kind of get back out on the tennis court, even though I'm in pain 24 hours a day. This recovery is brutal, and I can't take the pain meds because my body just can't tolerate it.
Doesn't handle. You get it.
Oh, I did not really know that, but now I do. And this week has just been really hard, and I've been struggling with why is it hard? And it's because I'm going to the gym, I'm going to the doctors, I'm here. I'm not out seeing art, which makes me happy. I'm not traveling, which makes me happy. I'm not having these conversations, which make me happy. I'm not around other people who are passionate about something to remind me of what I am passionate about. Like, this refills my bucket so that I can then go and do all of the things that I want to do, not just for, my personal business, but in supporting other people in the world who need the support.
1,000%.
And so I so appreciate this conversation, because you have reinvigorated me and reminded me of why I speak out the way that I do and why I do the things that I do. And even though I don't get the immediate feedback, my hope is that it's like little pebbles in the ocean or the water, the ripple effect, that if this conversation inspires someone to go read a book or go out and protest or speak up at something or mentor a man to say, look, I love this idea of mentoring men to say, hey, be better, do things differently, then my job is done. I mean, for the moment.
For the moment, we'll take a beat. So as we wrap up, I have one question I like to ask all my guests. But if you could give one piece of advice to your 16-year-old self, what would it be?
I thought about this. It's like, oh, be kinder, be gentler. It's like, no, don't let anyone tell you no. Don't let anyone tell you no. I think, and the reason why I say this is when I get to things faster. I connect things. It turns out it's because it's my ADHD. And I'm usually 2 to 3 years ahead. Like Piloting Your Life, I published in September of 2019. How much stuff now is around the menopause transition and midlife and aging and all of this? I mean, my book was 5 years ahead of time. But if anybody wants a copy, it's available everywhere, Piloting Your Life. But I remember being in meetings. I worked for a biotech company. We partnered with GlaxoSmithKline. So there are usually like 3 of us in the meeting and then like 20 people from GlaxoSmithKline. And I remember there was like a CIO or something, and he was saying some bullshit, and I would call him on the bullshit and I would speak my mind. And I'm justice warrior, speak your mind kind of person. And I would have 2 guys on either side of me kicking me to shut up. And I just remember that was just so symbolic of like most of my life, where I have people saying, shut up, you're embarrassing me, you're making a scene,
you're too much,
oh my gosh. Just, if I could tell, it's just like, don't take no, and you are not too much. You are every bit of awesomeness. Wear that fucking tiara, drink that champagne, be the troublemaker, because it'll make the world a better place.
I love that. Terry, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I think this is going to resonate, and I think it's going to fill a lot of women's cups, and I think it's going to motivate them. And I mean, that's what we're here for. Guys, make sure to check out Terry's book. I have it in the show notes below on her website, so you can get all the things that you want about piloting your life. And then we're going to have you follow her on her social media channels, because she's awesome, and we're here for it.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Bye, everyone. See you next week.